The sun sat mean over Coldwater that morning, the kind of heat that made dogs seek shade and men move slow. Ethan Rourke stood in the back pasture of his ranch, mending fence wire with hands that didn't shake anymore. Hadn't shaken in 7 years, not since he'd buried his past along with his wife and promised her grave he'd be different for their son. Caleb was 16 now, all elbows and earnestness, helping string the wire with the kind of determination that made Ethan's chest tight. The boy had his mother's eyes, soft brown, honest, and Ethan's build, lean and rangy. He didn't have his father's ghosts yet. Ethan aimed to keep it that way. "Dad, you think we'll get the fence done before the cattle auction?" Caleb asked, wiping sweat from his forehead. "If you quit talking and start pulling," Ethan said, but there was warmth in his gravel voice. The fence line ran close to the road that led into town, a dusty scar through scrub and prairie grass. They worked in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from knowing each other's rhythms. Father and son, rancher and apprentice, two people trying to live quiet in a world that rarely allowed it. Around mid-morning, Caleb headed into Coldwater for supplies. Ethan watched him ride off on the gray mare, felt that familiar twist of worry and pride. The boy sat a saddle well, rode with confidence but not arrogance. He'd be fine. Ethan went back to work. But Coldwater wasn't much. A main street flanked by weathered buildings, a saloon that doubled as a hotel, a general store, a land office, and a sheriff's station that hadn't seen a real lawman in 3 months. The town lived on cattle, ranching, and the hope that the railroad might someday give a damn about their corner of the territory. People kept their heads down, worked hard, and didn't ask for trouble. Trouble came anyway. It rode in 2 days before Caleb's trip to town, in the form of 3 men who carried themselves like they knew what violence looked like and didn't mind getting reacquainted. They worked for Marcus Thornhill, a land tycoon from the eastern part of the territory who'd been buying up ranches and water rights with money and muscle in equal measure. Thornhill wanted Coldwater and everything around it. What he wanted, he usually got. The 3 enforcers made themselves comfortable in the saloon. The tall one was called Vance, angular face, dead eyes, fast hands. The stocky one with the scar through his eyebrow went by Decker. The youngest, maybe 30, had a smile that didn't reach his eyes and a reputation for cruelty. People called him Harlan. They weren't subtle. They drank, they gambled, they made it known they were there on Thornhill's business. They wanted land deeds, water rights, anything that could be bought or intimidated loose. The deputy, a kid named Paul Mercer, barely old enough to shave, tried to assert authority once. Vance just stared at him until the boy's hand drifted away from his gun, and he walked back to the station, face burning. By the second day, fear had settled into Coldwater like dust. Caleb hitched the mare outside the general store and stepped inside, trading morning heat for the dim coolness of the shop. Mr. Brennan, the owner, greeted him with a nod. "Morning, Caleb. Usual order?" "Yes, sir. Flour, coffee, salt, and whatever nails you can spare." While Brennan gathered supplies, Caleb wandered the aisles. Near the counter sat a small display case of personal items, pocket watches, knives, trinkets. One piece caught his eye, a leather journal, well worn, with a brass clasp. It had belonged to his mother. She'd written in it during the last year of her life, recipes, thoughts, small observations about the ranch. After she died, Ethan had sold some of her things to Brennan, unable to look at them without breaking. Caleb had been too young to understand then. He understood now. "Mr. Brennan, how much for the journal?" Brennan glanced up, saw what Caleb was holding, and his expression softened. "That was your mama's. Should have never put it out." "It's yours, son. No charge." Caleb's throat tightened. "Thank you." He tucked the journal into his coat, felt its weight against his ribs like something alive. A piece of her. A piece of home. That's when the 3 enforcers walked in. Vance led, flanked by Decker and Harlan. They filled the small store with presence and menace, the kind of men who changed the air just by entering a room. Brennan's face went pale. "Help you, gentlemen?" Brennan's voice had gone thin. "Just looking," Vance said, eyes scanning the shelves. His gaze landed on Caleb. "Who's this?" "Caleb Rourke, sir," Caleb said, keeping his voice steady. "Rourke." Vance tilted his head. Your daddy owns that ranch west of here, doesn't he? Good land, good water. He does. Thornhill's been wondering about that property. Might want to make an offer. It's not for sale. Harlan laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Not for sale, kid's got confidence. Decker moved closer, crowding Caleb against the counter. What's that you got there? Caleb's hand instinctively moved to his coat covering the journal. Nothing that concerns you. I'll decide what concerns me. Decker reached out, grabbed Caleb's coat, and yanked. The journal tumbled out, hit the floor. The brass clasp broke, pages spilling open. Caleb's world narrowed. He dropped to his knees, gathering pages, hands shaking with anger. That belonged to my mother. Your mother? Harlan crouched down, plucked up a page, and pretended to read. Dear Diary, today I baked bread and worried about my boring life. He crumpled the page, tossed it aside. Something snapped in Caleb. He lunged, fist swinging wild. Harlan caught his wrist, twisted, and Caleb yelped. In one smooth motion, Harlan shoved him back into a shelf. Jars crashed to the floor. Brennan shouted. Vance just watched, smiling. Easy, boy, Vance said. You throw punches like that. Someone might think you're serious. Caleb stood, breathing hard, fury and shame mixing in his chest. Harlan tossed the journal onto the counter like garbage. Some pages were torn. The clasp hung useless. Tell your daddy, Vance said, voice soft and sharp. Thornhill's patience has limits. He wants to buy land, folks should sell. Otherwise, things get complicated. He tipped his hat in mock courtesy. You have a blessed day now. They walked out, boots heavy on the wooden floor. The door swung shut behind them. Caleb stood there, shaking, staring at the ruined journal. Brennan came around the counter, started picking up jars, not meeting Caleb's eyes. I'm sorry, son. I'm sorry. Caleb didn't answer. He gathered the journal, cradled it like something broken but still precious, and walked out into the brutal sunlight. He rode home in silence, shame and rage warring inside him. He'd wanted to fight. He'd wanted to hurt them. But he was 16 and untested, and they were men who knew violence the way other people knew their own names. He'd been helpless. Worse, he'd been humiliated in front of Brennan, in front of anyone who might have been watching through the store windows. When he reached the ranch, Ethan was hauling water to the trough. He looked up, saw Caleb's face, and set down the bucket. What happened? Caleb dismounted, pulled out the journal. Pages fluttered loose. 3 men in town. They work for some land buyer named Thornhill. They pushed me around, broke Mama's journal. His voice cracked on the last word. Ethan took the journal, turned it over in his hands. His face didn't change, but something in his eyes went cold and distant. They hurt you? Just my pride. Good. Ethan handed the journal back. Pride heals. That's it? Caleb's voice rose, frustration spilling over. They wreck something of hers, humiliate me in front of the whole town, and you just shrug? I didn't shrug. You might as well have. You always do this. Stay quiet, stay calm, pretend like nothing gets to you. But it does get to you, doesn't it? You just won't do anything about it. Ethan's jaw tightened. Doing something isn't always the answer. Then what is? Just letting people walk over us? Caleb, no. Caleb's voice shook. You taught me to stand up for myself, to be a man. But when it matters, you just fold. Maybe that's why they think they can do whatever they want, because they know you won't stop them. The words hung between them, cruel and unfair, and spoken from a place of hurt. Ethan looked at his son for a long moment, then turned away. Get the horses fed, he said quietly. We'll talk later. Caleb stalked off, still burning with shame and anger. He didn't see the way his father's hands had started to shake. Didn't see the way Ethan closed his eyes and took a long, steadying breath. Didn't see the man his father used to be, clawing at the edges of who he'd become. That night, Caleb lays in bed, staring at the ceiling. The journal sat on his nightstand, pages carefully smoothed out, clasp beyond repair. He felt small, felt helpless. The enforcers had treated him like a child, like something not worth noticing, and the shame of it gnawed at him. He didn't know his father was sitting on the porch, staring into the dark. Ethan Rourke had spent 7 years building a life from silence and soil. He'd been a different man before Coldwater, before the ranch, before he met Sarah and she'd looked at him with those soft brown eyes and seen something worth saving. He'd been a soldier first, then a hired gun, then something worse. A man who solved problems with precision and violence. He'd been good at it, too good. Sarah had pulled him out of that life. She'd given him a reason to bury the ghosts, to learn the rhythms of ranching instead of gunfighting, to raise a son who wouldn't carry the weight of his father's sins. For 7 years, it had worked. Now 3 men had walked into his son's life and left marks. Ethan sat in the dark, remembering the feel of a gun in his hand, the way time slowed when violence arrived, the cold clarity that came with knowing exactly how to break a man. He'd buried that part of himself deep. But burying something doesn't kill it. It just makes it wait. He thought about Caleb's words. Maybe that's why they think they can do whatever they want, because they know you won't stop them. The boy was wrong, but he was also right. Ethan stood, walked to the edge of the porch, and looked toward the distant glow of Coldwater's lights. 3 men, enforcers, thugs with just enough skill to be dangerous and just enough backing to think they were untouchable. He could let it go. Teach Caleb that some fights weren't worth having, that pride was a poor reason to risk everything. That would be the right choice, the safe choice. But those men had put their hands on his son, had destroyed something of Sarah's, had done it knowing there'd be no consequence. Ethan went back inside. He moved quietly through the house, opened a trunk in the back of his closet. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, were things he hadn't touched in years. A gun belt, a Colt revolver, meticulously maintained, a knife with a bone handle, items from a life he'd left behind. He didn't take them out. Not yet. He just needed to know they were still there. Morning came with the kind of stillness that felt like held breath. Caleb woke to find his father already up, coffee made, breakfast on the table. They ate in silence. The tension from the night before still hung between them, unresolved. "Caleb," Ethan said finally, setting down his cup, "what those men did was wrong. You understand that?" "Yeah." "And what you wanted to do, fight back, that wasn't wrong either. But fighting isn't always about fists and anger. Sometimes it's about knowing when to move and when to wait." Caleb looked at his father, saw something in his eyes he didn't recognize. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Caleb nodded slowly. "Yeah, I can do that." "Good." Ethan stood, walked to the window, looked out at the brightening sky. "I'm riding into town today. I need you to stay here. Work on the fence. Don't come looking for me, no matter what you hear." "Dad, no matter what you hear, Caleb." There was something final in his father's voice, something that made Caleb's stomach twist. "What are you going to do?" Ethan didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was quiet. "Something I hoped I'd never have to do again." He saddled his horse, a big roan gelding with scars on its flanks from a life before the ranch. Caleb watched from the porch, torn between worry and something else. Hope, maybe, or fear. His father rode like a different man today. Straight-backed, deliberate. Like he was heading towards something instead of away from it. Before Ethan reached the road, he turned back. "Caleb, if I don't come back, don't say that. If I don't come back, the ranch is yours. There's a letter in my desk. It explains things. You'll be all right." "Dad!" But Ethan was already riding, dust rising behind him. Well, word traveled fast in small towns. By the time the sun reached its peak, people in Coldwater knew Ethan Rourke was coming. They didn't know why, but they knew it meant something. The quiet rancher who'd kept to himself for 7 years didn't just ride into town in the middle of the week for no reason. The 3 enforcers were in the saloon drinking and playing cards. Deputy Mercer had tried to assert himself again that morning, and Vance had put him in his place with a few quiet words about jurisdiction and consequences. The boy had retreated to the sheriff's station, humiliated and angry. Around 11:30, a ranch hand named Coulter burst into the saloon. He was breathing hard, eyes wide. "Rourke's coming." Vance looked up from his cards. Who? Ethan Rourke, the rancher, the one whose kid you roughed up yesterday. Harlan laughed. The farmer? What's he going to do? Bore us to death? But Vance wasn't laughing. He'd been in this business long enough to recognize a name that carried weight, even if he couldn't place it yet. What do you know about him? Coulter hesitated. Not much, keeps to himself, but I heard stories. Before he settled here, he was something else, something bad. Stories? Decker snorted. Nobody's got a past. Maybe. Coulter backed toward the door. But if I were you, I'd be ready. He left. The three enforcers sat in silence for a moment. You think there's anything to it? Harlan asked. Vance stood, walked to the window, looked out at the empty street. Heat shimmered off the dirt. A dog trotted past, tongue lolling. Nothing moved. Doesn't matter, Vance said. He comes in here making noise, we put him down. Thornhill wants this town scared. Dead rancher sends a message just fine. They checked their guns, adjusted their positions, waited. Ethan rode into Coldwater just before noon. The street was empty, windows shuttered. People knew better than to be visible when trouble arrived. He tied his horse outside the saloon, stood for a moment in the shade of the overhang, and felt the old rhythms returning. The way his breathing slowed, the way his vision sharpened, the way the world narrowed to threats and angles and outcomes. He'd killed his first man at 19, a Confederate ambush during the war. It had felt wrong then, necessary, but wrong. By the time the war ended, it had stopped feeling like anything at all. That should have scared him. It didn't. After the war, he drifted, hired his gun to whoever paid. Cattle barons, railroad men, anyone who needed problems solved with precision and silence. He'd been good at it, built a reputation, made enemies and money in equal measure. It was a life without roots, without future, without anything except the next job and the next ghost. Then he met Sarah in a town not unlike this one, and she'd looked at him like he was more than the sum of his scars. She'd given him a reason to walk away. He'd taken it, grateful and desperate, and buried everything he'd been. But you can't bury instinct. You can't bury muscle memory. You can't bury the part of you that knows exactly how to kill a man and feels nothing about it. Ethan pushed open the saloon doors. Inside, the three enforcers sat at a table near the back. Vance in the center, Decker to his left, Harlan to his right. Classic positioning, spread out, clear lines of fire. They'd done this before. The bartender, an old man named Sykes, looked up, saw Ethan, and went pale. Mr. Rourke, can I get you? No. Ethan's voice was calm. He walked toward the table, each step measured. I'm here for them. Vance leaned back in his chair, studying Ethan. You'd be the rancher, Rourke. I would. Your boy's got a mouth on him. Needed a lesson in respect. My boy's 16. You're grown men. Act like it. Harlan grinned. Or what? You gonna teach us manners? Ethan stopped 10 feet from the table, close enough to be heard, far enough to move if things went bad. You broke something that belonged to my late wife. You put your hands on my son. I want an apology. The three men stared at him. Then Decker started laughing. Harlan joined in. Even Vance smiled. An apology, Vance said. That's rich? You ride all the way into town, make a scene, for an apology? Yes. And if we don't feel like apologizing? Ethan's expression didn't change. Then we'll have a different conversation. Vance stood slowly, hands resting on the table. I don't know who you think you are, old man, but you just made a mistake. We work for Marcus Thornhill. That means we've got backing. We've got authority. You? You're nobody. A dirt farmer with delusions. Maybe. So here's how this goes. You turn around, walk out, and we forget this happened. You make trouble, we put you in the ground, and Thornhill takes your land anyway. Your boy ends up with nothing. That what you want? Ethan's gaze moved from Vance to Decker to Harlan, measuring them. Reading stance, weight distribution, which hand favored which weapon. It came back to him like breathing. Last chance, Ethan said. Apologize. Harlan stood, hand drifting toward his gun. How about you make us? The moment stretched. The saloon held its breath. Sykes ducked behind the bar. Then Deputy Mercer burst through the doors, young and flushed and trying to be brave. "Nobody's shooting anybody!" His voice cracked. He had a rifle held awkwardly. "Mr. Rourke, you need to leave. You three, sit down." Vance's smile widened. "Deputy, good timing. Arrest this man. He's threatening law-abiding citizens." What? No, Do your job, boy." Mercer's hands shook on the rifle. He looked at Ethan, then at the enforcers, caught between authority and fear. "Mr. Rourke, please, just go." Ethan didn't move, didn't take his eyes off Vance. "I'm not leaving without what I came for." "Then I'll have to arrest you." "You do what you have to, Deputy." Mercer stepped closer, rifle raised but wavering. He was 22, scared, in over his head. "I'm serious. Hands where I can see them." Ethan slowly raised his hands, but his eyes never left Vance. "This doesn't end here." "Sure it does," Vance said. "Take him away, Deputy. Lock him up. We'll decide what to do with him later." Mercer moved behind Ethan, hands shaking. "I'm sorry, Mr. Rourke. I got no choice." He reached for Ethan's wrist, and Vance drew. The movement was fast, practiced, the kind of draw that came from doing it 100 times in 100 situations. His gun cleared leather, barrel rising toward Ethan. Ethan moved. What happened next took less than 3 seconds, but felt like drowning. Ethan twisted, grabbed Mercer's rifle, yanked it up and around. Vance's shot went wild, punching into the ceiling. Ethan used the rifle like a club, slamming it into Mercer's shoulder and sending the boy sprawling. Then he dropped, rolled, came up with his own gun drawn. He'd worn it under his coat, against every promise he'd made himself, and fired twice. The first shot hit Vance in the shoulder, spinning him. The second hit Decker in the thigh before he could clear his holster. Harlan managed to get his gun out, got one shot off that splintered the bar. Ethan fired again, clipping Harlan's arm. Then it stopped. Vance on the ground, clutching his shoulder, face twisted in pain and shock. Decker sprawled back against the wall, blood spreading across his leg. Harlan on his knees, gun dropped, hand pressed to his wounded arm. Deputy Mercer stared from the floor, eyes wide, unable to process what he'd just seen. Ethan stood in the center of the saloon, gun still raised, breath steady. The smell of gunpowder hung heavy. His hands didn't shake. "Jesus Christ," Sykes whispered from behind the bar. Vance looked up at Ethan, recognition finally dawning. "You're him. You're Rourke. Ethan Rourke. The Wolf." The name hit the room like a cold wind. The Wolf. A ghost from the old wars, the range conflicts, the bloody years when law was a suggestion and survival meant being faster and colder than the next man. Men had told stories about the Wolf, about the hired gun who never missed, never hesitated, never showed mercy. Ethan had thought that name was dead. "I was," he said quietly. "Not anymore." "Thornhill's gonna kill you for this," Vance hissed through pain. "He's gonna burn your ranch, kill your boy, erase you." "Maybe, but you won't see it." He lowered his gun, looked at Mercer. "Get the doctor, patch them up, then lock them in a cell. I'll be at the sheriff's station." "You're surrendering?" Mercer's voice was thin. "I'm taking responsibility. There's a difference." Ethan walked out of the saloon into the blinding noon sun, gun still in his hand, and for the first time in 7 years, he felt like himself again. It terrified him. Behind him, the 3 wounded enforcers bled and cursed and realized they'd pushed the wrong man. The town watched from behind curtains and cracked doors, finally understanding what they'd sheltered all these years. And far to the north, in a comfortable office, Marcus Thornhill would soon receive a telegram that would change everything. The quiet man had spoken. Now the territory would answer. The doctor's name was Emmett Cross, and he'd seen enough gunshot wounds in his 40 years to know the difference between amateurs and professionals. The 3 men laid out in his clinic were proof someone in Coldwater knew exactly what they were doing. "Clean shots," Cross muttered, probing Decker's thigh with forceps. The stocky enforcer hissed through clenched teeth. "Missed the artery by half an inch. Either lucky or precise." Precise, Vance said from the next cot, his shoulder bandaged and his face gray with pain. Rourke knew exactly where to put them. Cross glanced at him. The rancher did this? The wolf did this. The name made Cross's hands still. He was old enough to remember that name from the border wars, the range conflicts, the brutal years when the territory was carved up by men with guns and ambition. The wolf had been a ghost story to some, a nightmare to others. A hired gun who never missed, never wavered, never left witnesses unless he chose to. I thought he was dead, Cross said quietly. So did we. Vance's laugh came out bitter. Turns out he just got quiet. Across the room, Harlan sat hunched over his wounded arm, fury and shock still warring on his face. We walked right into it, pushed his kid around like he was nobody. He is nobody, Decker spat. Thornhill's gonna burn him out for this. Maybe. Vance stared at the ceiling, thinking. Or maybe Thornhill's gonna realize he just kicked a hornet's nest and needs to step careful. Deputy Mercer stood in the doorway, pale and shaking. He'd watched Ethan Rourke move like death itself, had seen 3 armed men dropped in seconds, and nothing in his brief training had prepared him for that. He'd taken this job because the last sheriff had retired and the town needed someone to wear the badge. He'd thought it would be simple, breaking up bar fights, mediating disputes over property lines, maybe chasing down a horse thief. Now he had 3 wounded enforcers, a legendary killer sitting in his jail, and no idea what to do next. Doc, how long before they can travel? Mercer asked. Couple days, if they're lucky. Week if they're smart and let themselves heal. We need to send word to Thornhill, Vance said. He needs to know what happened. Mercer nodded, though the thought of Marcus Thornhill descending on Coldwater made his stomach twist. I'll send a telegram. Make sure you tell him the wolf's back, Vance said. He'll want to know what he's dealing with. Mercer left, walked back toward the sheriff's station through streets that felt different now. People watched from windows, whispered from doorways. The story was already spreading. Ethan Rourke, the quiet rancher, was actually someone else, someone dangerous, someone who'd been hiding among them for 7 years. Inside the station, Ethan sat in the single holding cell, hands loose between his knees, staring at nothing. He looked calm, looked like a man waiting for weather to pass. But Mercer could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw worked. I sent for the doctor, Mercer said. They'll live. Good. You could have killed them. I could have. Why didn't you? Ethan looked up, met Mercer's eyes. Because killing's easy, living with it isn't. Mercer pulled a chair over, sat down outside the cell. His rifle leaned against the wall, unloaded now. He'd learned that lesson. Who are you? Really? A rancher. That's not what Vance said. He called you the wolf. Ethan's expression didn't change. That was a long time ago. Was it true? The things they say about you? Depends on what they say. Mercer leaned forward. They say you were a hired gun during the range wars, that you worked for cattle barons and railroad men, that you killed maybe 30 men, maybe more, and never got caught because you were too careful and too good. Some of that's true, some of it's exaggeration. Men like to build legends out of blood. Which parts are true? Ethan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was tired. I was a soldier first. Then I was a hired gun. I did things I'm not proud of. Hurt people who probably didn't deserve it, all because someone paid me to. I was good at it, and that should have scared me, but it didn't. Not until I met my wife. What changed? She did. She looked at me and saw something worth saving, gave me a chance to be someone else, so I walked away. Buried that life. Became Ethan Rourke, rancher. Raised a son. Tried to forget. But it's not something you can forget, is it? No. Ethan's hands tightened. It's always there. Waiting. And when those men put their hands on my boy, when they broke something that belonged to Sarah, he trailed off, shook his head. I told myself I'd never go back. But some things you can't let stand. Mercer stood, paced. What happens now? Thornhill's gonna come. He's gonna want revenge, and he's got resources. Money, men. You can't fight an empire alone. I'm not trying to fight an empire. I just want to protect my son. Then you should have stayed quiet. Maybe. Ethan looked at him. But then what would I be teaching Caleb? That you let men push you around? That you hide when trouble comes? Better to hide than to die. Not always. The door opened and Cross came in, wiping blood from his hands. They'll live. I've seen worse. You want me to check on our friend here? I'm fine, Ethan said. Humor me. Cross unlocked the cell, stepped inside with his bag. He checked Ethan's hands for powder burns, looked him over. No wounds. Figures. You always were too careful to get shot. Ethan's eyes narrowed. We know each other? Briefly, 20 years ago, down in Sonora territory. You were working for the Triple K Ranch during the water rights dispute. I was patching up the other side. I don't remember you. You wouldn't. You were focused on the job. But I remember you. You walked into a camp of 8 men, said your piece, and walked out. 3 of them were dead before anyone realized what happened. That was a different life. Was it? Cross closed his bag. Or did you just put it away for a while? He left. Mercer locked the cell again, feeling like he was in over his head. I need to send that telegram. You got anything you want me to tell Thornhill? Tell him the truth. That I defended my son. That I'll defend my land. And that if he wants peace, I'm willing. But if he wants war... Ethan paused. Tell him I remember how to fight one. Mercer walked to the telegraph office, composed a message that felt too small for what had happened. He sent it north to Marcus Thornhill's estate, then walked back through town, feeling eyes on him from every window. The response came faster than expected. 3 hours later, the telegraph operator ran to the station, breathless, holding a slip of paper. Mercer read it twice, hands shaking. Understand situation. Sending representation. Expect arrival. 3 days. Maintain order. No further violence. Thornhill. 3 days, Mercer said aloud. What happens in 3 days? Ethan, still in the cell, smiled without humor. We find out how badly he wants this town. News of the telegram spread through Coldwater like fire through dry grass. 3 days until Thornhill's people arrived. 3 days of waiting and wondering. The town held its breath. That evening, Caleb rode into town against his father's orders. He'd waited at the ranch until the not knowing became worse than any risk, then saddled the gray mare and came looking for answers. He found them in whispers and sidelong glances, in the way people avoided his eyes or stared too long. He went to the sheriff's station. Mercer tried to stop him at the door. Your father doesn't want you here. I don't care what he wants. I need to see him. But Caleb, now. Mercer stepped aside. The boy had his father's stubbornness. That much was clear. Caleb walked to the cell, saw his father sitting on the cot, and felt something break loose in his chest. What did you do? What needed doing? They're saying you shot 3 men, that you're some kind of killer from before, that you lied about who you were. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell the whole truth. That's the same thing. Caleb's voice rose. You let me grow up thinking you were just a rancher, that we were just normal people. But we're not, are we? You're not. Ethan stood, came to the bars. Sit down, Caleb. I don't want to sit down. I want answers. Then I'll give them to you, but you need to calm down and listen. Caleb pulled a chair over, sat hard. His hands were shaking. Talk. Ethan took a breath, measuring his words. Before I met your mother, I was a different man. Soldier, hired gun, whatever you want to call it. I hurt people for money. I was good at it, and I didn't ask questions. That life, it hollows you out. Makes you into something that works but doesn't feel. I would have died that way. Old, alone, empty, if I hadn't met Sarah. Mom knew? She knew. I told her everything. She looked at me anyway, saw past all of it, and gave me a chance. So I walked away. Changed my name, started over, became someone she could love. Someone who could be a father. But you were lying the whole time. No, I was trying to be better. There's a difference. Caleb's eyes were wet. What happens now? I don't know. Thornhill's sending people. Could be lawyers, could be more guns. Either way, there's going to be a reckoning. What do I do? You stay out of it. You go back to the ranch, you keep your head down, and you let me handle this. I can help. No. Ethan's voice went hard. This is my fight. Mine. You don't carry this weight. I'm not a kid anymore. You're 16. That's still a kid in my book. Caleb stood, angry and helpless. You can't protect me from everything. I can try. The boy left without another word, shoulders tight, hands balled into fists. Mercer watched him go, then looked at Ethan. He'll be all right, Mercer said. Will he? Ethan sat back down. I'm not so sure. The next 2 days crawled by. The three enforcers healed enough to sit up, to eat, to talk in low voices about what came next. Doc Cross kept them sedated and under watch. Mercer divided his time between the station and the clinic, trying to maintain order in a town that felt like a powder keg. People talked. Some said Ethan was a hero for standing up to Thornhill's men. Others said he'd doomed them all, that Thornhill would burn Coldwater to the ground for this insult. A few old-timers who remembered the range wars spoke quietly about the wolf, about the kind of man who could disappear into a new life but never really leave the old one behind. On the second night, a stranger rode into town. He was tall, lean, dressed in black with a flat-brimmed hat and a rifle slung across his back. He tied his horse outside the saloon and walked in like he owned the place. His name was Samuel Kane, and he was a bounty hunter. Sykes, behind the bar, recognized the type immediately. Help you? Whiskey and information, Sykes poured. What kind of information? Heard there was trouble here. Shooting. Thought I'd see if there's paper on anyone involved. No bounties here, just local business. Kane sipped his whiskey, eyes scanning the empty saloon. Local business that involves the wolf? The room went still. Sykes's hand froze on the bottle. Thought that might get your attention, Kane said. I've been tracking stories about Ethan Rourke for 15 years. Heard he went quiet, disappeared somewhere out west. Now I hear he's here. Shot 3 men in broad daylight. He's in custody. Good. That makes it easier. Makes what easier? Kane smiled. Collecting. There's old paper on the wolf from the Sonora conflicts. Territory of Arizona's offering $5,000 for information leading to his capture. Figure how much. I just found myself a payday. Sykes leaned forward. He's not wanted for anything recent. He defended his son. Don't care about recent, care about old debts. Kane finished his whiskey, set the glass down. Where's the sheriff's station? Sykes pointed. Kane nodded, walked out. He found Mercer at the station, boots up on the desk, trying to read a law book and failing. Mercer looked up, saw Kane, and felt his stomach drop. Deputy. Kane tipped his hat. Name's Samuel Kane. I'm here about your prisoner. He's not going anywhere. Didn't say he was, but I've got legitimate claim on him. Old bounty from Arizona. I'm here to collect. Mercer stood. You've got paper? Kane pulled a folded document from his coat, handed it over. Mercer read it, felt his hands go cold. It was real. A warrant from 1858, signed by a territorial judge for the arrest of Ethan Rourke in connection with killings during the Sonora water conflicts. This is 18 years old, Mercer said. Warrants don't expire, you know that. He's already in custody. You can't just, I can and I will. Unless you want to obstruct a legal bounty claim, in which case we'll have problems. Mercer looked at the cell where Ethan sat, listening. What do you want? Transfer of custody. I take him north, collect my money, and you get to keep your town clean. Everybody wins. Except him. Kane shrugged. He made his choices, now he pays. Ethan stood, came to the bars. Kane. The bounty hunter turned, studied him. Rourke, you look older. I am older, we all are. True enough. You remember Sonora, the Triple K business? I remember. You killed 5 men in one night, called it self-defense, but there were witnesses who said otherwise. Judge put paper on you. I've been carrying it ever since. That was a different life. Law doesn't care about different lives, just debts. Ethan gripped the bars. I've got a son, a ranch, a life here. Had, Kane corrected. Past tense. You shot 3 men 2 days ago. That life's done. Mercer stepped between them. He stays here until this is settled legally. I'm not handing him over to some bounty hunter without due process. Kane's smile went thin. Deputy, you're new at this, so I'll explain. That warrant gives me authority. You refuse, I can go over your head to the territorial marshal, but that takes time, and I'm not patient. So here's what's going to happen. I'm taking custody of Rourke tomorrow morning. You can cooperate, or I can make this difficult. Get out. Tomorrow morning, Kane repeated. He walked to the door, paused. Oh, and if you're thinking about letting him escape, don't. I'll track him, and when I find him, I'll bring him in dead instead of alive. Your choice. He left. Mercer locked the door behind him, turned to Ethan. What do we do? Ethan sat back down. Nothing. He's got the law on his side. There's got to be something. There isn't. I knew this could happen, knew my past might catch up. I just hoped it wouldn't be now. What about Caleb? He'll have the ranch. There's money saved. He'll be all right. Will he? Ethan didn't answer. That night, word spread about Kane. The bounty hunter made no secret of his claim, walking the streets like he'd already won. People whispered. Some felt bad for Ethan. He'd defended his son, after all. Others thought maybe this was justice for old sins. Nobody knew what to do. Around midnight, Caleb rode back into town. He'd heard about Kane from Coulter, who'd stopped by the ranch with news. Now he stood outside the sheriff's station, cold rage burning in his chest. Mercer opened the door. You shouldn't be here. I need to talk to my father. Caleb, please. Mercer let him in. Father and son faced each other through bars again, and this time Caleb's anger had burned down to something colder. They're taking you, Caleb said. I know. We can stop them. How? I don't know. Break you out. Run. Fight. And then what? Spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders? You want that? I want you home. Ethan's throat tightened. I want that too, but sometimes what we want doesn't matter. So you're just giving up? I'm facing consequences. There's a difference. Caleb gripped the bars. You told me to stand up for myself, to be a man, but when it matters, you fold. The words hit Ethan like a fist, his own words thrown back at him. That's not fair, isn't it? You taught me to fight. Now you won't. This isn't about fighting. It's about accepting responsibility for things I did before you were born. I don't care about before. I care about now, about you being here. I'm sorry, Caleb. The boy's eyes filled. Sorry doesn't fix this. He left, slamming the door. Mercer watched him go, then looked at Ethan. He's right, you know. You could fight this. How? Kane's got legal paper. Thornhill's sending people. I'm outnumbered and outgunned. You're the wolf. People are terrified of that name. People should be. But being feared doesn't make you right. Mercer sat down, thinking. What if there was another way? There isn't. Hear me out. Thornhill's people arrive tomorrow, same day Kane wants to take you. What if we use that? Create confusion, buy time. For what? I don't know yet, but sitting here waiting to be taken doesn't sit right. Ethan studied the young deputy. You'd risk your job for this? Maybe, or maybe I'm finally doing it right. Mercer stood. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be complicated. Morning came with storm clouds gathering in the north. The town woke to the sound of horses. 6 riders coming down the main street, led by a woman in a black riding coat with silver buttons. She was in her 40s, sharp-faced, with gray threading through dark hair pulled back tight. Her name was Margaret Kane, and she was Marcus Thornhill's lawyer. She rode straight to the sheriff's station, dismounted, and walked inside without knocking. Mercer stood up from his desk. Deputy Mercer? That's right. Margaret Kane, representing Marcus Thornhill. I'm here to address the situation regarding my client's employees. They're recovering at the doctor's clinic. I'd like to see them, and I'd like to speak with Ethan Rourke. He's in custody. For what crime? Assault, attempted murder. Kane's eyebrow raised. Self-defense, from what I understand. My client's men initiated the confrontation. Your client's men broke the law, harassing a minor. That's a matter of perspective. She moved closer. Deputy, let's be clear. Mr. Thornhill doesn't want war. He wants resolution. His men overstepped. Mr. Rourke responded. Both sides have grievances. I'm here to find middle ground. And if there is no middle ground? Her expression hardened. Then Mr. Thornhill will pursue every legal avenue to ensure justice. He has resources, connections. He can make life very difficult for this town. Is that a threat? It's reality. The door opened and Kane walked in. Morning, Deputy. I'm here for my prisoner. Kane turned. Who are you? Samuel Kane, bounty hunter. I've got legal claim on Rourke. On what grounds? Kane showed her the warrant. She read it, frowned. This is ancient history. Still valid. We'll see about that. She looked at Mercer. I want to speak with Rourke alone. Ma'am, I can't. 5 minutes. Surely you can allow that. Mercer hesitated, then nodded. He led her to the cell. Ethan stood as she approached. Mr. Rourke, I'm Margaret Kane. I know who you are. Then you know I represent Marcus Thornhill, and despite what you might think, my client isn't interested in revenge. He's interested in resolution. What kind of resolution? The kind where everyone walks away intact. You've injured 3 men. That's a liability, but my client understands you were protecting your son. He's willing to overlook the incident if you're willing to make concessions. What concessions? Sell him your ranch, fair market value, plus 20% for the inconvenience. You take the money, relocate, and everyone forgets this happened. Ethan laughed, low and bitter. You want me to give up my home because your client's thugs couldn't behave. I want you to make a smart business decision. Otherwise, Mr. Kane takes you north on that old warrant, and your son gets the ranch anyway. Except he'll be alone, managing it at 16, with no protection from men like Vance when they come back. You'd send them back? Mister, Thornhill needs that land. He'll get it one way or another. Ethan gripped the bars. Tell Thornhill he can have my land when I'm dead, not before. That can be arranged. The words hung cold between them. Kane smiled slightly. I'll give you until noon to reconsider. After that, Mr. Kane takes you, and my client proceeds with acquiring your property through other means. Your choice. She left. Kane grinned at Ethan. Looks like everybody wants a piece of you. Ethan sat down, mind racing. He was boxed in, Kane on one side, Thornhill on the other, and his son caught in the middle. The old instincts whispered solutions, all of them violent. But violence had started this. More violence wouldn't end it. Outside, the storm clouds moved closer. The town waited. And somewhere in the hills, Caleb Rourke sat on a ridge overlooking Coldwater, his father's old rifle across his lap, making calculations of his own. Because if adults wouldn't solve this, maybe a boy who'd just learned the world was crueler than he'd thought would have to try. The storm didn't break. It just sat heavy over Coldwater, turning the air thick and restless. Caleb watched from the ridge, rifle across his knees, counting the riders who'd come with Margaret Kane. 6 total, including her. 2 looked like lawyers or clerks. The other 3 had the same bearing as Vance's crew, hired muscle dressed up in trail coats. He'd been sitting there since dawn trying to figure out what a 16-year-old could do against lawyers and bounty hunters and men with guns. The math didn't work in his favor, but sitting at the ranch while his father got hauled away didn't work either. Below, the town stirred. People moved between buildings like they were afraid to be seen. The saloon stayed closed. Even the general store had its shutters half drawn. Coldwater had become a town holding its breath. Caleb slid the rifle back into its scabbard and started down the ridge. He didn't have a plan. He just knew he couldn't sit still anymore. Back at the sheriff's station, Ethan stood at the barred window, watching the street. Noon was 3 hours away. 3 hours until Kane's deadline. 3 hours until Kane came to collect him. The walls felt closer than they had yesterday. Mercer sat at his desk, pretending to review paperwork, but really just staring at the same page. The kid was in over his head and knew it. Ethan almost felt sorry for him. You should let Kane take me. Ethan said quietly. Mercer looked up. What? It's the cleanest way out. I go north, face whatever charges they've got, and Thornhill leaves Coldwater alone. Maybe leaves Caleb alone, too. You don't believe that. No, but it's better than the alternative. Which is? Ethan turned from the window. Kane wasn't bluffing. Thornhill wants my land. If I don't sell, if I'm not around to defend it, he'll move on Caleb. The boy won't stand a chance. So what do you want to do? I don't know. Ethan's hands tightened on the bars. I spent 7 years building a life where I didn't have to make these choices. Now I'm right back where I started, deciding who gets hurt so someone else can walk away clean. The door opened and Doc Cross came in, medical bag in hand. He looked tired. Deputy, I need to talk to you. About? The enforcers, Vance specifically. Mercer stood. What about him? Cross glanced at Ethan, then back to Mercer. He's been talking, says he wants to make a statement, official, about Thornhill. That got Ethan's attention. What kind of statement? The kind that might change everything. Cross set his bag down. He's scared, thinks Thornhill might decide 3 wounded enforcers are a liability, wants to trade information for protection. Mercer's eyes widened. Information about what? Land fraud, intimidation, falsified deeds. Vance says he's got evidence, papers, names, dates. Says Thornhill's been running this scheme across 3 territories for years. Ethan moved closer to the bars. Why now? Why's he turning? Because he's smart enough to know he's expendable. Kane shows up with lawyers and new muscle. Doesn't even check on our wounded men. That tells Vance everything he needs to know. He's already been replaced. Mercer paced. If we have evidence against Thornhill, real evidence, we could bring in the territorial marshal. Make this legitimate. Or we could get everyone killed, see, Ethan said. Thornhill's got reach. He finds out Vance is talking, he'll clean house. Vance, us, anyone who knows too much. So we do nothing? Mercer's voice rose. Just let him keep taking what he wants? I'm saying be smart about it. If Vance has evidence, we need to secure it before Kane figures out what's happening. Cross nodded. He's got papers hidden. Wouldn't tell me where, but he'll trade them for immunity and safe passage out of the territory. That's not my authority to grant, Mercer said. Then get someone whose authority it is. But do it fast. Kane's not stupid. She'll figure out Vance is the weak link. The doctor left. Mercer looked at Ethan. What do you think? I think Vance is playing an angle. But if there's even a chance those papers are real, we have to take it. You want to help Thornhill's man? I want to stop Thornhill. If that means dealing with Vance, so be it. Mercer grabbed his hat. I'm going to the telegraph office. There's a territorial judge in Silver Springs, 2 days' ride north. Maybe he can authorize something. You've got 3 hours before Kane's deadline. Then I better ride fast. He left at a run. Ethan watched him go, then sat back on the cot. The pieces were moving, but he couldn't see the whole board yet. Too many players, too many angles. Outside, Caleb reached the edge of town. He tied his horse behind the livery, moved through the alley toward the main street. He'd never felt so exposed, like everyone could see the rifle under his coat, read his intentions on his face. He needed to see his father, needed to know what was happening. But as he approached the sheriff's station, he saw Margaret Kane standing on the steps, flanked by her hired men. She was talking to Kane, their voices low but heated. Caleb ducked into the gap between 2 buildings, close enough to hear. Don't care about your warrant, Kane was saying. My client has priority here. Your client has nothing. Kane's voice was calm, almost amused. I've got legal paper, 18 years old but valid. The wolf comes with me. Mr. Thornhill is prepared to make a substantial offer for your claim, $20,000. You walk away, we handle Rourke our way. Kane laughed. Lady, I've been hunting this ghost for 15 years. $20,000 doesn't buy that satisfaction. $30,000. That stopped him. Caleb saw Kane's expression shift, calculating. You're serious? Entirely. My client wants this resolved without federal involvement. You taking Rourke to Arizona means trials, publicity, questions Mr. Thornhill would prefer to avoid. Take the money. Disappear. Let us clean this up quietly. And what happens to Rourke? Kane's smile was cold. That's not your concern. Kane considered, then shook his head. Can't do it. This isn't about money anymore. It's about finally putting the wolf down. Some debts you can't pay off. Everyone has a price. Not me. Not for this. Kane's expression hardened. Then we have a problem. No, lady, you have a problem. I'm taking custody at noon, and if you interfere, I'll add obstruction to my report. Your client might have influence, but bounty law crosses territorial lines. You can't touch me. He walked away. Kane watched him go, jaw tight, then turned to her men. Find Mercer. I want to know where he went. They scattered. Caleb pressed himself against the wall, heart hammering. $30,000. They were offering that much just to get his father? And Kane had turned it down. The bounty hunter wasn't just after money. He wanted blood. Caleb waited until the street cleared, then moved toward the station. The door was locked. He knocked, quiet but urgent. No answer. He knocked again. It's Caleb. Let me in. The lock clicked. The door opened an inch. Ethan stood there, his expression dark. I told you to stay at the ranch. I had to come. Why? So you can watch them take me? So you can get yourself hurt trying to stop it? So I can help. Ethan's face softened slightly. He opened the door wider. Get inside, quick. Caleb slipped in. The station was empty. Mercer must still be gone. Father and son stood in the dim room, and Caleb realized this might be the last time they'd have alone. I heard Kane and Kane talking, Caleb said. She offered him $30,000 to walk away. He said no. Kane's the type who'd rather prove a point than get rich. Makes him dangerous. What are we going to do? We aren't doing anything. You're going back to the ranch. Stop trying to protect me. Caleb's voice cracked. I'm not a kid anymore. Stop treating me like one. You're my son. Protecting you is what I do. Even if it gets you killed? Ethan moved to the window, stared out at the gathering clouds. Better me than you. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. Caleb came up beside him. You taught me to stand up, to fight when it matters. This matters. Fighting isn't always the answer. You used to think it was. And look where it got me. Ethan turned to face him. Caleb, listen to me. Everything I did before you were born, every choice I made, it was all about survival, about being harder and faster than the next man. I was good at it, but it emptied me out, made me into something that worked but didn't feel. Your mother saved me from that, gave me a reason to be better. You're that reason now. So you're just going to let them take you? Let Thornhill win? If it means you're safe, yes. I don't want safe. I want you home. Ethan's throat tightened. He reached out, gripped Caleb's shoulder. Sometimes what we want doesn't matter. Sometimes the best we can do is make sure the people we love survive. That's not good enough. It has to be. The door crashed open. One of Kane's men stood there, gun drawn. Step away from the boy. Ethan moved in front of Caleb. Easy. Nobody needs to get shot. Mrs. Kane wants to see the boy. Now. He's not going anywhere. The hired gun cocked his pistol. That wasn't a request. Caleb stepped around his father. It's all right. I'll talk to her. Caleb, I'll be fine. He walked out before Ethan could stop him. The hired gun followed, leaving Ethan alone in the station, hands shaking with helpless rage. Kane waited in the saloon. She'd commandeered a table near the back, paper spread out in front of her. When Caleb was brought in, she gestured for him to sit. Mr. Rourke, thank you for joining me. Caleb sat, trying not to show fear. I didn't have much choice. True, but let's pretend this is civilized. She poured 2 glasses of water, slid one to him. I understand you're close with your father. He's my father. Of course I am. Then you want what's best for him. I do. Good. Because what's best for him right now is cooperation. My client is willing to make a very generous offer for your ranch. Enough money for you and your father to start over somewhere else. Somewhere far from bounty hunters and old warrants. We don't want to leave. One is irrelevant. Your father shot 3 men. He's going to face consequences. The question is whether those consequences destroy you both, or whether you walk away with enough to rebuild. Caleb leaned forward. Why does Thornhill want our land so badly? Water rights. Your ranch controls access to the western tributaries. Without it, development in this region stalls. So it's just business. Everything is business, Mr. Rourke. The sooner you understand that, the easier your life becomes. My father won't sell. Then he's a fool, and you're a fool for standing with him. Kane's eyes hardened. Here's what's going to happen. At noon, Samuel Kane takes custody of your father. He goes north to face old charges. Meanwhile, my client begins foreclosure proceedings on your ranch. You're 16, you can't maintain the property alone, and there are debts your father hasn't mentioned. Within 6 months, Thornhill owns your land anyway. There are no debts. There will be. Paperwork is surprisingly easy to create when you have the right connections. She smiled. Or you convince your father to sell. Take the money, disappear, live. You're threatening us. I'm offering you a way out. There's a difference. Caleb stood. I need to talk to my father. You have until noon. After that, the offer expires. She waved him away. Caleb walked out into the street, mind racing. Everything was closing in. Kane, Thornhill. His father was right. They were boxed in from every side. He headed back to the station, but halfway there he saw Mercer riding in hard, his horse lathered with sweat. The deputy dismounted, ran to the station. Caleb followed. Inside, Mercer was breathless. I got word to Judge Hartley in Silver Springs. He's sending a federal marshal, but it'll take 2 days. Ethan gripped the bars. We don't have 2 days. I know, but if we can stall, how? Kane's got legal paper. Kane's got money and muscle. What do we have? Mercer pulled out a folded document. This. Statement from Vance, witnessed by Doc Cross. Details of Thornhill's land fraud operation. Names, dates, forged deeds. Enough to open a federal investigation. Ethan took it, read quickly. His expression shifted. This is real. This could actually work. If we can keep everyone alive long enough for the marshal to arrive. That's a big if. Caleb spoke up. What if we give them what they want? Both men looked at him. What do you mean? Mercer asked. Kane wants the ranch. Kane wants Dad. What if we promise both? Buy time. They won't believe it, Ethan said. They might, if I'm the one offering. Absolutely not. You're not getting involved in this. I'm already involved. Caleb's voice rose. Stop trying to keep me out of it. I can help. Ethan and Mercer exchanged looks. Finally, Mercer spoke. What's your plan? I go to Kane. Tell her I'll convince Dad to sell, but I need time. A few days to work on him, get the papers in order. Meanwhile, we tell Kane the same thing, that Dad will surrender peacefully, but we need time to settle affairs. It buys us until the marshal arrives. They'll see through it, Ethan said. Maybe. But what else do we have? The clock on the wall showed 11:15, 45 minutes until noon. Mercer looked at Ethan. It's worth a shot. It's dangerous. They're not going to just take his word. Then we make it convincing. Mercer grabbed paper and pen. I'll write up a provisional agreement, make it look official. Caleb takes it to Kane, says you're considering the offer but need time. Meanwhile, I show Kane the surrender terms. It's weak, but it might hold them off. Ethan wanted to argue, wanted to lock Caleb somewhere safe and fight this alone. But the boy was right. They were out of options. And time. All right, he said quietly. But Caleb, you stay in public. Don't go anywhere alone with Kane or her men. And if anything feels wrong, you run. Understand? I understand. Mercer scribbled out the documents, his handwriting shaky but legible. He handed one to Caleb. Show her this. Say your father needs 48 hours to consider. Be respectful. Don't give her reason to doubt. Caleb took the paper, folded it carefully. His hands were shaking. Ethan saw it, felt his chest tighten. Caleb, look at me. The boy met his eyes. You're braver than I was at your age, braver than I am now, but bravery doesn't mean reckless. Be careful. I will. He left. Ethan watched him go, every instinct screaming to stop him, to keep him close. But the boy was already out the door, walking toward the saloon where Kane waited. Mercer checked his pocket watch. 11:30. If this works, we've got breathing room. And if it doesn't, then we figure out plan B. There is no plan B. I know. They waited in tense silence. Minutes crawled. Outside, the storm clouds pressed lower, turning the air heavy and electric. At 11:40, the door opened. Not Caleb, Kane. The bounty hunter stepped inside, his expression unreadable. Deputy Rourke. Kane. Mercer stood, blocking access to the cell. We need to talk. Nothing to talk about. I'm taking custody at noon. We're asking for an extension, 48 hours. Rourke needs to settle his affairs, make arrangements for his son. Kane's eyes narrowed. That sounds like a stall. It's a reasonable request. The boy's 16. He can't manage the ranch alone. Rourke needs time to ensure he's taken care of. Not my problem. Mercer pulled out the second document. We're prepared to guarantee Rourke's surrender. Signed statement, witnessed by me and the town's doctor. He won't run. Kane took the paper, scanned it. This is worth exactly nothing. The wolf's word against legal warrant. It's all we can offer. Then we have nothing to discuss. Kane handed the paper back. At noon, I'm opening that cell and taking him. You can cooperate or get out of the way, but either way, it's happening. The clock showed 11:50. Ethan stood. Kane, listen to me. There's a federal investigation coming. Thornhill's operation is going to collapse. If you take me now, you'll be caught in the middle of it. Is that really worth $5,000? Investigation. Kane's laugh was bitter. You think I don't know how these things work? Thornhill's got judges, marshals, politicians in his pocket. Your investigation will get buried along with anyone who pushed it. Not if the evidence is solid. Evidence can disappear. People can disappear. Kane checked his gun, making sure it was loaded. I've been in this business 30 years, Rourke. I know how the game plays. The only thing that matters is what I can prove and what I can collect. And right now, I can prove you're the wolf, and I can collect on that warrant. 11:55. The door opened again, Caleb breathing hard, eyes wide. She agreed. Everyone turned. What? Mercer said. Kane. She's giving us 48 hours. She wants the sale finalized. Papers ready to sign, but she agreed to wait. Kane's expression darkened. That's so. Yes, sir. She's preparing the contracts now. Convenient. Kane looked at Ethan. Sounds like you've got friends working angles I don't see. No angles, just trying to do right by my son. Your son. Kane studied Caleb. Boy, you know what your father is? What he's done? I know he's a good man trying to protect his family. He's a killer, put bodies in the ground across 3 territories. You think that just goes away because he plays farmer for a few years? Caleb's jaw tightened. People can change. No, they can't. They just hide better. Kane turned to Mercer. I'm giving you until sundown tomorrow, not 48 hours. Sundown. After that, I take him by force if I have to. Understand? Mercer nodded. Understood. Kane walked out. The door closed behind him, and the tension broke like a snapped wire. Caleb sagged against the wall. You did good, Ethan said. Ethan. I lied to her. She's going to figure it out. Maybe, but you bought us time. Mercer grabbed his hat. I need to check on Vance, make sure his statement is secure. You two stay here. Don't go anywhere. He left. Father and son alone again in the dim station. Caleb moved to the cell. What happens at sundown tomorrow? I don't know. The marshal won't be here by then. Probably not. So we're back where we started. Not exactly. Ethan gripped the bars. We have Vance's testimony. We have time to prepare. And we have you safe, which is what matters most. Caleb's eyes filled. I don't want to lose you. I know, but sometimes, don't say it. Don't tell me sometimes what we want doesn't matter. I'm tired of hearing that. Ethan fell silent. Outside, thunder rumbled. The storm was finally coming. At 12:15, the rain started, heavy, sudden, turning the street to mud. People ran for cover. The town disappeared behind sheets of water. And in the doctor's clinic, Vance lay in his cot, listening to the storm, thinking about the statement he'd given. He'd betrayed Thornhill, signed his own death warrant. But maybe, just maybe, he'd also bought himself a way out. The door to the clinic opened. A figure in a rain-soaked coat stepped inside. Vance looked up. Who? The knife was fast, professional. One thrust between the ribs, angled up into the heart. Vance gasped, tried to speak, but blood filled his mouth. The figure held him down until the light left his eyes, then wiped the blade clean and walked back out into the rain. Doc Cross found the body 20 minutes later. He stood in the doorway, staring at the dead man, and understood immediately what had happened. Someone had known about the statement. Someone had acted fast. And now the only witness who could bring down Thornhill was gone. Cross stood in the doorway of his clinic, rain hammering the roof, staring at Vance's body. The man's eyes were still open, fixed on the ceiling with that look the dead get. Surprised, almost offended, like dying was the last thing they'd expected. The knife wound was clean, professional. Someone who knew anatomy, knew exactly where to put the blade to make it quick and quiet. Cross had seen wounds like this before, back in the war, back when surgeons doubled as battlefield executioners for men too far gone to save. He closed Vance's eyes with shaking fingers, then walked into the rain without his coat. Mercer was at the telegraph office when Cross found him. The deputy turned, saw the doctor's face, and knew immediately something had broken. What happened? Vance is dead, murdered, maybe 20 minutes ago. The words hit Mercer like a fist. How? Knife, single thrust. Whoever did it knew what they were doing. Cross wiped rain from his face. The statement's worthless now. Without Vance to testify, it's just paper. The documents he mentioned, he never told me where they were, said he'd only reveal the location if he got immunity in writing. Now we'll never know. Mercer's mind raced. Decker and Harlan, they're still at your clinic? Back room, sedated. Why? Because if someone's cleaning house, they might be next. They ran back through the mud, boots sliding. The clinic door stood open, rain blowing in. Cross cursed, pushed inside. The back room was empty. 2 cots, blankets thrown aside, window shattered. Decker and Harlan were gone. They ran, Cross said. Soon as they heard about Vance, they bolted. Or someone took them. Either way, they're in the wind. Mercer stared at the broken window. We've got nothing now. No witnesses, no evidence, just a dead man and a story nobody will believe. What do we tell Rourke? The truth, that we're out of moves. They walked to the sheriff's station, rain-soaked and beaten. Inside, Ethan stood at the cell bars, Caleb sitting on a chair nearby. Both looked up as the men entered. Ethan saw their faces and understood before they spoke. What happened? Vance is dead, Mercer said flatly. Killed in his cot. Decker and Harlan are gone. Caleb stood. Who killed him? Don't know. Could be Thornhill's people cleaning up loose ends. Could be someone else. But whoever it was, they knew about the statement and moved fast. Ethan's hands tightened on the bars. The documents Vance mentioned? Gone. He never said where they were hidden. Without him, we've got nothing. The station fell silent except for the drumming rain. Everything they'd worked for in the last few hours had collapsed. The investigation, the leverage, the hope, all of it gone with one knife thrust. Caleb broke the silence. What about Kane? She gave us 48 hours. We still have that. She gave us 48 hours because she thought we were negotiating in good faith, Ethan said. When she finds out Vance is dead and we've got no evidence, that deal disappears. Maybe she doesn't know yet. She will soon. Mercer slumped into his chair. This town isn't big enough to keep secrets. By tonight, everyone will know Vance was murdered. Kane's not stupid. She'll put it together. Ethan looked at each of them in turn. Mercer, exhausted and out of his depth. Cross, angry and helpless. Caleb, scared but trying not to show it. They'd all taken risks for him, and now they were paying for it. "Let Kane take me," Ethan said. "Dad, I mean it. This is my fight. My past catching up. You've all done more than anyone should, but it's time to stop." Mercer stood. "If Kane takes you, Thornhill still gets your ranch. Caleb still loses everything. Caleb keeps his life. That's what matters." "That's not what matters." Caleb's voice cracked. "You keep saying that, but you're wrong. What matters is you being here. What matters is not giving up." "I'm not giving up. I'm accepting reality." "No, you're running, just like you've been running for 7 years. You buried who you were, pretended it didn't exist, and now when it comes back, you want to fold instead of fight." The words stung because they were true. Ethan had been running from his past, from violence, from the parts of himself that scared him. He'd built a life on silence and distance, hoping it would be enough. But you can't outrun yourself forever. "What do you want me to do?" Ethan asked quietly. "Fight Kane? Kill him? Then what? More men come. More blood. Where does it stop?" "I don't know, but it doesn't stop with you in chains heading north." Cross spoke up. "The boy's right. You surrender to Kane. You're done. Warrant that old. They'll hang you before you get a fair trial. And Thornhill will still take your land, probably run Caleb off, or worse. So what's your suggestion?" "I don't have one. But giving up, isn't it?" The clock showed 1:15. The rain hadn't let up. Thunder rolled across the valley, shaking windows. Mercer walked to the window, stared out at the flooded street. There might be one option. Everyone looked at him. "We turned the tables. Instead of waiting for Kane to take Rourke, or for Kane to figure out we've got nothing, we go to them. Bring them together. Force a confrontation." "That's insane, Chaz," Cross said. "Maybe. But right now, they're working separate angles. Kane wants Rourke for the bounty. Kane wants the ranch for Thornhill. They're not coordinating. What if we make them compete?" Ethan shook his head. "You want to auction me off?" "I want to create chaos. Get them in the same room, let their interests collide. While they're arguing jurisdiction and payment, maybe we find an opening." "An opening to what?" "I don't know yet, but sitting here waiting to lose doesn't feel right." Caleb looked at his father. "It's better than nothing." "It's barely better than nothing," Ethan said. But he was thinking now, old instincts stirring. Chaos was a tool. He'd used it before, back when he was the wolf. Create confusion, let opponents make mistakes, exploit the gaps. It was risky. But Mercer was right. Waiting to lose wasn't a plan. "All right," Ethan said slowly. "How do we do this?" Mercer started pacing, ideas forming. "We send word to both of them. Say we're ready to deal. Kane gets his prisoner, but we need guarantees about Caleb's safety. Kane gets her land deal, but she has to meet our terms. We bring them both to the saloon, neutral ground, and see what happens." "They'll see through it." "Probably, but they'll come anyway because neither wants to lose to the other. Kane doesn't want Kane's money undermining his bounty claim. Kane doesn't want Kane taking you before she secures the land. And when they both show up, we figure it out as we go." It was a terrible plan. Desperate, half-formed, likely to end badly. But it was movement instead of paralysis, action instead of surrender. Ethan had lived enough years to know that sometimes a bad plan executed was better than a good plan delayed. "Do it," he said. Mercer grabbed paper and pen, started writing. 2 messages, carefully worded to give each recipient just enough hope to show up. He finished, handed them to Cross. "Deliver these. Kane first, then Kane. Tell them both we're meeting at the saloon at 4 o'clock, 3 hours from now." Cross took the messages. "This is going to get people killed." "Maybe, but doing nothing guarantees it." The doctor left. Mercer unlocked the cell. Ethan stepped out, rubbing his wrists where the bars had pressed. "You're releasing me?" Ethan asked. "If we're doing this, you can't be locked up. Besides, I'm pretty sure you could have broken out any time you wanted." "I could have tried." "But you didn't because you're trying to do right by your son. I respect that." Mercer handed him his gun belt. "You're going to need this." Ethan strapped it on, feeling the familiar weight. The Colt sat heavy on his hip, and for the first time in years it felt right instead of wrong. That should have scared him. It didn't. Caleb watched, seeing his father transform. The quiet rancher was gone. In his place stood someone harder, colder, more focused. The wolf. "Dad, are you sure about this?" "No, but I'm sure about protecting you. Everything else is just details." They spent the next 2 hours preparing. Mercer sent word to Sykes to open the saloon at 4, make sure it was empty except for the invited parties. He positioned himself near the window, rifle within reach. Ethan checked his gun, loaded it carefully, each bullet seated with precision. Caleb sat at the table, watching, learning. "When this starts," Ethan said, "I want you outside, behind cover. If shooting starts, you run. Don't look back. Just run." "I'm not leaving you." "You are. Because if something happens to me and you're standing in the crossfire, then everything I've done means nothing. I can help. You can help by surviving. That's the only thing I need from you." Cross returned at 3:30. "Both of them are coming." Kane didn't look happy about it. Kane looked suspicious. "But they're coming." "Good." Mercer checked his pocket watch. 30 minutes. "Everyone clear on the plan?" "What plan?" Cross said. "We're making this up as we go." "That's the plan." They moved to the saloon. Sykes had the lamps lit, the back room cleared. A single table sat in the center with 5 chairs. Mercer took position near the bar. Ethan stood by the window. Caleb reluctantly went outside, taking cover behind a water trough with a clear view of the door. The rain had slowed to a drizzle. The street was empty except for puddles reflecting gray sky. At 4 o'clock exactly, Kane arrived. He walked in alone, hand resting on his gun, eyes scanning the room. He saw Ethan, saw Mercer, and his expression went flat. "This better not be a trick." "No trick," Mercer said. "Just trying to find a solution everyone can live with. The solution is simple. I take Rourke, collect my bounty, and you all go back to your lives." "It's not that simple anymore." "Why not?" Before Mercer could answer, the door opened again. Margaret Kane stepped in, flanked by 2 of her hired men. She took in the scene, Kane, Ethan, Mercer, and her mouth tightened. "What is this?" "A negotiation," Mercer said. "We've got competing interests here. Thought we should discuss them openly." Kane's eyes locked on Kane. "You're the bounty hunter." "And you're Thornhill's lawyer. We've met." "I made you an offer. You refused." "I did. Still do." Kane turned to Mercer. "I agreed to 48 hours. This meeting violates that agreement." "Circumstances changed," Mercer said. "Vance is dead. Murdered. Your other 2 men ran. We've got no witnesses, no evidence, and a town that's starting to ask hard questions about what Thornhill's really doing here. That's not my concern." "It should be, because if this turns into a federal investigation, your client's going to have bigger problems than one ranch." Kane laughed. "Federal investigation? With what evidence? You've got nothing." "We've got a dead man who was about to testify. That raises questions." "Questions aren't evidence." Ethan spoke for the first time. "What if I testify?" Everyone turned. Kane's eyes narrowed. "About what?" "About what I saw 7 years ago when I was working the border. About the land schemes, the falsified deeds, the intimidation. I didn't know who was running it then, but I know now. It was Thornhill." It was a bluff. Ethan had never worked for or against Thornhill, but Kane didn't know that, and the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes said she couldn't be sure. "You're lying," she said. "Maybe. But can you afford to find out? I testify. Even if half of it's fabrication, it'll tie up your client in court for years, cost him millions, destroy his reputation. It'll also get you hanged for the old warrant. I'm willing to take that risk if it protects my son." Kane studied him, calculating. "What do you want?" "Immunity, for me and Caleb, in writing, signed by a federal judge. You drop the land claim, Kane walks away, and we all pretend this never happened." Kane stepped forward. "I've got legal paper. You can't negotiate that away." "Watch me." Ethan's hand drifted toward his gun. "I've spent 7 years trying to be someone different, trying to bury the wolf. But you keep pushing, keep backing me into corners, and eventually that part of me stops being buried and starts being useful. The threat hung in the air. Kane's hand moved to his own gun. Kane's hired men tensed. Mercer raised his rifle slightly. Easy. Nobody needs to die here. Someone already did, Kane said quietly. Vance, you think that was random? That was a message from my client to anyone thinking about talking. The admission landed like a stone. She'd just confirmed Thornhill had ordered the hit. Ethan's eyes went cold. You're admitting to murder. I'm stating a fact. Vance betrayed his employer. Employers don't like betrayal. And you're fine with that? I'm paid to protect my client's interests. How I do that is my concern. Kane looked at her with disgust. You're worse than the men you hire. At least I'm honest about it. The tension coiled tighter. Ethan could feel it, the moment before violence, when everyone's made their calculations and decided peace isn't worth the cost. He'd been here before, dozens of times. Usually he'd been the one pushing things toward blood. Now he was trying to pull back, and it felt wrong, like fighting against instinct. Last chance, Ethan said. Immunity for me and my son. Drop the land claim. Walk away. Or what? Kane's smile was sharp. You shoot us all? That worked so well last time. It worked well enough. Vance, Decker, and Harlan were street muscle. We're different, and my client has resources you can't imagine. You kill me, he'll send 10 more. You kill them, he'll send 100. How many can you kill before one gets through to your boy? Caleb, listening from outside, felt ice in his stomach. She was threatening him directly now, using him as leverage against his father. Ethan's hand closed on his gun. Don't. Don't what? Tell the truth? Your son is the weak point, always has been. That's why you'll lose. Kane spoke up. Lady, you're making this worse than it needs to be. Stay out of this, bounty hunter. This is between me and the wolf. Not anymore. Kane stepped between them. I came here for one thing, collecting on a legal warrant. But I'm not about to stand here while you threaten a kid. How noble. Too bad nobility doesn't pay. Neither does stupidity. You keep pushing, someone's going to push back. And I don't think you want to find out what the wolf looks like when you take away his last reason to stay civilized. Kane looked at Ethan, really looked at him, and saw something that made her hesitate. The quiet rancher was gone. What stood in his place was something dangerous, something that had killed before and would kill again without hesitation. She gestured to her men. We're leaving. You have until sundown tomorrow to reconsider. After that, my client takes what he wants, and you deal with the consequences. What about Kane's warrant? That's his problem. She walked out, her men following. The door closed behind them. Kane stood there, jaw tight. She's going to get people killed. She already has, Mercer said. Vance deserved what he got. Traitor. Kane looked at Ethan. But the kid doesn't, and threatening him crosses a line. So what now? Kane was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out the old warrant, stared at it, and did something Ethan didn't expect. He tore it in half. What are you doing? Mercer asked. Something stupid. Kane tossed the pieces on the table. I've been chasing the wolf for 15 years. Built it up in my head as this grand reckoning. But standing here, watching that woman threaten a kid to get what she wants? He shook his head. That's not justice. That's just cruelty, and I'm tired of being part of it. Ethan stared at him. Why? Because I had a son once. Lost him to men like Thornhill, men who take what they want and don't care who gets crushed. I told myself hunting people like you made it right, made it mean something, but it doesn't. Just makes me another part of the machine. He headed for the door, paused. You've got until sundown tomorrow. Use it to get your boy somewhere safe, because Thornhill's not going to stop, and next time it won't be lawyers and threats. Kane walked out into the fading light, leaving Ethan and Mercer in stunned silence. Caleb came in from outside, soaked from the drizzle. He just walked away. He did. Why? Because somewhere under all that hardness, he's still human. Ethan holstered his gun. And humans can surprise you. Mercer slumped into a chair. So Kane's out. That's good. But Kane's still a problem, and now we know for sure Thornhill's willing to kill to get what he wants. Then we give him a reason to stop. How? Ethan thought back to Vance's statement, to the evidence that had died with him. Vance said he had documents, proof of Thornhill's fraud. He never said where, but he had to hide them somewhere close, somewhere he could access if he needed leverage. He was at your clinic for 2 days, Mercer said to Cross. Did he go anywhere? Talk to anyone? Cross shook his head. Barely left his cot except to use the privy. The privy? Ethan stood. Where is it? Out back of the clinic. Small outhouse. Show me. They ran through the mud to the clinic, around back to the narrow outhouse. Ethan pulled open the door, looked inside. Nothing obvious. He checked the walls, the floor, the space under the seat. There, a loose board near the base. He pried it up with his knife, reached into the gap, and pulled out an oilskin package. Inside were documents. Deeds with mismatched signatures, letters from Thornhill ordering intimidation, financial records showing payments to hired guns. Everything Vance had promised, wrapped and hidden in the last place anyone would look. We've got it, Ethan said. We've got everything. Mercer took the documents, hands shaking. This is enough. Enough to bring down Thornhill's whole operation. If we can get it to the right people before Kane figures out we have it. The marshal's still 2 days out. Then we make these 2 days count. They went back to the station, spread the documents on the desk. Cross witnessed each one, signed his name confirming they came from Vance's hiding place. Mercer made copies of the most damning pieces, sealed them in separate envelopes. We send these 3 different ways, Mercer said. 1 to the territorial judge in Silver Springs, 1 to the federal marshal heading here, 1 to the newspaper in Denver. Let them publish it. Thornhill can't suppress all 3. It took them until midnight to finish. The rain had stopped. Stars broke through the clouds. Mercer took the envelopes to 3 separate couriers, paid them well, and sent them riding in different directions. By dawn, the truth about Marcus Thornhill would be in motion, spreading faster than he could stop it. Ethan and Caleb sat in the station, exhausted. Father looked at son, saw the fear and determination mixed together. We did it, Caleb said. Maybe. Or we just painted bigger targets on our backs. What do we do now? We wait, and we prepare for Kane to figure out what we've done. The answer came sooner than expected. Just after 2 in the morning, flames lit the sky north of town. Caleb saw them first from the window. Dad, look! Ethan came to the window, saw orange glow on the horizon, and knew immediately what it was. The ranch was burning. They rode hard through the darkness, Ethan and Caleb pushing their horses to the edge of collapse. The glow on the horizon grew brighter with each mile, orange and terrible against the black sky. Caleb kept his eyes fixed on it, hands tight on the reins, trying not to imagine everything they'd built turning to ash. When they crested the last ridge, the full scope of the destruction became clear. The house was gone, collapsed into itself, flames still licking at the remaining beams. The barn was burning, the roof already caved in. Fence posts stood like charred bones against the firelight. 7 years of work, of building something honest from broken ground, reduced to ruin in a single night. Ethan pulled his horse to a stop, sat there staring. His face showed nothing, but his hands were shaking. Caleb dismounted, walked toward the remains of the house. Heat pushed him back. He could see the outline of the kitchen table through the flames, the chair where his mother used to sit, the door frame where his father had marked his height each birthday, all of it burning. They took everything, Caleb said, his voice hollow. Ethan climbed down from his horse, moved to stand beside his son. Not everything. You're still here. The house, the barn, all of it, can be rebuilt. With what? We had money saved in the house, the deed, everything. Ethan put a hand on Caleb's shoulder. Then we rebuild with nothing. Won't be the first time. Caleb turned to him, tears cutting tracks through the soot on his face. How can you be so calm? They destroyed our home. I'm not calm. I'm furious, but fury without direction just burns you out from the inside. Ethan looked at the flames. Kane did this, or had it done. This is her answer to us finding those documents. So what do we do? We make sure it was worth it. They rode back to town as dawn broke gray and cold. Mercer met them at the edge of the street, saw their faces, and knew. The ranch? Gone, Ethan said. Burned to the ground. Mercer's jaw tightened. Kane's getting desperate. That's good. Means the documents are working. Doesn't feel good. I know, but desperate people make mistakes. We just need to be ready when she makes hers. They walked to the station. Doc Cross was there, along with a handful of townspeople. Sykes from the saloon, Brennan from the general store, Coulter the ranch hand, a few others. They'd heard about the fire, seen the smoke, and come to offer what help they could. Brennan stepped forward. Mr. Rourke, we're sorry about your ranch. We took up a collection. It's not much, but he held out a small leather pouch. Maybe enough to get you started again. Ethan took it, felt the weight of coins inside. You didn't have to do this. Yeah, we did. You stood up when the rest of us were too scared. Time we returned the favor. Sykes spoke up. We've been talking about Thornhill, about what he's done to other towns. He comes in, pushes people out, takes what he wants. We're tired of it. If you're planning to fight, we'll stand with you. Ethan looked at these men, shopkeepers and laborers, none of them fighters, all of them scared but trying to be brave. This isn't your fight. It is now. He burned your ranch. Next week it could be my saloon or Brennan's store. We draw the line here, or we don't draw it at all. It was the kind of moment that changes things, when ordinary people decide they've had enough of being pushed around. Ethan had seen it before, in other towns, other conflicts. Sometimes it ended in victory. More often, it ended in blood. If you stand with me, people might die. Then we die standing instead of living on our knees. Mercer stepped forward. We've got maybe 12 hours before those documents reach the right people. Until then, we're exposed. Kane knows we've got something on Thornhill, and she's going to move hard to shut us down. What's she got left? Cross asked. Her enforcers are dead or gone. She's just got those 2 hired guns. That we know of. Thornhill's got resources. He could send more men. Could send a lot more. As if summoned by the words, a rider appeared at the end of the street. Then another. Then 5 more. 8 riders in total, moving slow and deliberate through the morning light. They wore dusters and trail clothes, but their gun belts sat professional and ready. These weren't local muscle. These were specialists. They stopped in front of the saloon. Margaret Kane stepped out to meet them, spoke briefly, then pointed toward the sheriff's station. The riders came forward. Ethan watched them approach, counting guns, reading postures. 8 trained men against a rancher, a deputy, a doctor, and a handful of shopkeepers. The math was simple and brutal. Mercer loaded his rifle with shaking hands. What do we do? We talk first. Shooting starts, we're all dead. Ethan walked out into the street. Caleb moved to follow, but his father stopped him. Stay inside. No matter what happens, you stay inside. Dad, please. Caleb stepped back, but his hand moved to the pistol his father had given him that morning. It was a small thing, worn but well kept. He didn't know if he could use it, didn't know if he had that in him. Ethan stopped 20 feet from the riders. The lead man was older, maybe 50, with gray threading through his beard and eyes that had seen too much. His name was Garrett, and he was a range detective, the kind hired to handle problems that law couldn't touch. Ethan Rourke, Garrett said. Heard you were dead. Heard the same about you. Clearly, we both disappointed people. Garrett leaned forward in his saddle. I'm here on behalf of Marcus Thornhill. You've got something that belongs to him. We'd like it back. Those documents belong to Vance, and Vance is dead. Dead men don't own anything. Hand them over, and we'll ride out peaceful. Can't do that. Then we'll take them. Ethan's hand drifted toward his gun. You can try. Garrett studied him, measuring. I know what you are, Rourke, what you were. The wolf. Killed maybe 30 men, maybe more. You were good at it, but that was 20 years ago. You're older now, slower. And you're 1 man against 8. I faced worse odds. And survived by being smart. So be smart now. Give us the documents, take your boy, and ride out. Thornhill gets what he wants, you get to live. Everybody wins. Except the towns he's already destroyed, the families he's ruined. They don't win. Not my concern. I'm paid to solve problems, not judge them. That what you tell yourself so you can sleep? Garrett's expression hardened. I sleep fine. You won't if you keep pushing this. Behind Ethan, the townspeople had gathered, armed with hunting rifles and old pistols, standing in a ragged line behind Mercer. They looked terrified and determined in equal measure. One of Garrett's men laughed. Look at this. Farmer's playing soldier. Shut up, Welch, Garrett said. He looked at the townspeople, then back at Ethan. You're going to get these people killed. That what you want? I want Thornhill to face justice. That's all. Justice. Garrett shook his head. There's no such thing, just winners and losers. Right now, you're losing. A new voice cut through the tension. Maybe not. Everyone turned. Samuel Kane stood at the edge of the street, rifle in hand. He looked tired, but steady. Kane, Garrett said, this isn't your fight. Wasn't. Then I made it my fight. Why? Because I'm tired of men like you deciding who wins and loses based on who pays the most. Another figure emerged from the general store, dock cross, medical bag in one hand, shotgun in the other. I'm not much for fighting, but I'm less for standing aside while good people get crushed. One by one, more townspeople stepped forward. Sykes with his pistol. Brennan with a rifle. Coulter. A blacksmith named Hayes. A widow named Martha who'd lost her husband to Thornhill's men in another town. They formed a line across the street, blocking access to the station. Garrett looked at them, calculating. You're all going to die for nothing. Maybe, Kane said, but we'll take some of you with us. Question is whether you're willing to pay that price for Thornhill's documents. The standoff held, tension coiled tight. 8 professional guns against maybe 15 civilians and 1 bounty hunter. The professionals would win, but it would cost them. Blood and bodies scattered across Coldwater's main street, just to retrieve papers that might already be on their way to federal marshals. Garrett turned to Ethan. Last chance. Hand over the documents, and nobody dies today. Can't. They're already gone. Sent to 3 different places last night. By now they're in the hands of people who can't be bought or scared off. You're bluffing. Am I? Search the station. Search me. You won't find them because they're not here. Garrett's eyes narrowed. He knew Ethan was telling the truth. Could see it in his posture, his certainty. The documents were beyond reach. Thornhill's not going to accept this. Thornhill's going to hang for fraud and murder. Those documents have names, dates, everything. His empire's done. Then he's got nothing to lose by burning this town to the ground. Probably not, but you do. You and your men ride away now. You're just guns who took a job that went bad. You start killing townspeople. You're murderers. Federal marshals don't ignore that, even for money. The calculation played across Garrett's face. He looked at his men, at the townspeople, at the bodies this would cost. Then he looked at Kane, who stood on the saloon steps watching. What do you want me to do? He called to her. Kane's face was pale. She'd played her hand and lost. The documents were gone. Killing these people wouldn't bring them back, would just add more charges when the law finally arrived. Stand down, she said quietly. Ma'am, stand down. It's over. Garrett nodded slowly, then turned his horse. You heard the lady. We're done here. His men looked confused, angry, but they followed orders. They rode out the way they'd come, dust rising behind them. Kane watched them go, then looked at Ethan. This isn't finished. Yes, it is. By tonight, those documents will be public record. Thornhill's operations will be under investigation from here to Denver. You want to keep fighting? Go ahead, but you'll be fighting alone. She didn't answer, just walked back into the saloon. Her 2 remaining hired men followed, and 10 minutes later, all 3 rode out of town heading east. The street exhaled. People lowered their weapons, looked at each other in disbelief. They'd stood down 8 professional guns with nothing but nerve and numbers. Sykes started laughing, a shaky, relieved sound. We did it. We actually did it. We survived, Kane corrected. Not quite the same thing. Caleb came running from the station, threw his arms around his father. Ethan held him tight, feeling the boy shake with relief and exhaustion. Is it over? Caleb asked. The immediate danger, yes, but there's still cleanup, still consequences. Mercer joined them. The federal marshal should be here by tomorrow evening. We'll give him the copies we kept, show him the burn site at your ranch, tell him everything. With Kane's admission about Vance's murder, we've got enough to bring charges. What about Thornhill himself? He'll lawyer up. Might take years to put him away, but his operation's done. Those documents will ruin him. It wasn't perfect justice. It wasn't clean. But it was something. Over the next 2 days, the pieces fell into place. The federal marshal arrived, a hard-faced man named Tolliver, who'd seen range wars and land grabs before. He took statements, examined the documents, visited the burned ranch. Within a week, warrants were issued for Marcus Thornhill and Margaret Kane on charges of fraud, conspiracy, and murder. Thornhill was arrested at his estate, still denying everything. Kane disappeared before they could take her into custody, last seen boarding a train to California. She'd surface eventually, or she wouldn't. Either way, her part in Coldwater's story was finished. Decker and Harlan were found dead in a ravine 30 miles north. Someone had put bullets in the back of their heads, probably Thornhill's cleanup crew, tying off loose ends. The law buried them without ceremony. Kane stayed in town for 3 days, helping Mercer write reports, making sure the legal side was solid. On the 4th morning, he came to say goodbye. You heading out? Ethan asked. Figure I've worn out my welcome. Besides, there's always another bounty, another ghost to chase. You could stay. Town could use a deputy. Mercer's learning, but he's green. Kane smiled. I'm not the staying type, never was. But maybe someday I'll pass through again, see how things turned out. He shook Ethan's hand, nodded to Caleb, and rode north. Ethan watched him go, wondering if the bounty hunter would ever find what he was looking for. Probably not. Men like Kane spent their lives chasing things that couldn't fill the holes inside them. The townspeople helped Ethan and Caleb start rebuilding. They cleared the burned timbers, salvaged what little could be saved, laid foundation stones for a new house. It would be smaller than before, simpler, but it would be theirs. One evening, as they worked side by side, Caleb asked the question that had been weighing on him. Are you sorry? About coming back to this life? About being the wolf again? Ethan set down his hammer, wiped sweat from his forehead. I didn't come back to that life. I just used pieces of it when I had to. Is there a difference? I think so. The wolf was who I was when nothing else mattered except the job. Now I'm a father first. The rest is just tools I keep in the back of the shed. But you're good at it, at the violence, at being that person. Being good at something doesn't mean you should do it. I'm probably good at a lot of things I choose not to be. Ethan looked at his son. You were brave through all this. Braver than you should have had to be. But I need you to understand something. What happened here, the shooting, the fear, the way we had to fight, that's not how life is supposed to work. That's broken men creating broken situations. So what is life supposed to be? Quieter, simpler, building things instead of breaking them. Raising horses, fixing fence, watching your son grow up without having to teach him how to survive violence. Ethan's voice went soft. Your mother wanted that for you, so do I. But if it comes again? If someone else like Thornhill shows up? Then we deal with it. But we don't go looking for it. We don't become what we fight against. They worked until dark, then sat on the foundation stones looking at the stars. The valley was quiet again. The danger had passed, leaving only the work of rebuilding. The journal, Caleb said suddenly. Mom's journal. It was in the house. I know. I'm sorry. I should have... Stop. You have nothing to apologize for. Ethan reached into his coat, pulled out a small wrapped package. I grabbed it. The morning after the fire. Went through the ashes, found it in the remains of your room. Covers damaged, some pages burned, but most of it's intact. He handed it to Caleb. The boy unwrapped it carefully, saw his mother's handwriting, and started crying. Not from sadness, exactly. From relief. From having something of her back when he thought it was gone. You went back into the burned house for this? Of course I did. It was important to you. That makes it important to me. Caleb clutched the journal to his chest. Thank you. They sat in silence for a while, father and son, watching the stars wheel overhead. Finally, Caleb spoke again. What did you mean when you said people can't bury who they are? When did I say that? You didn't. Cain did. He said you can't bury instinct, that the wolf was always going to come back. Ethan thought about it, choosing his words carefully. I think Cain's wrong. I think people can change. Not completely. We carry our past with us, the skills we learned, the things we've done, but we get to choose what we do with those pieces. I learned to shoot, to fight, to survive violence. That's part of who I am. But I also learned to raise you, to build a ranch, to be someone your mother could love. That's part of who I am too. So which part wins? Neither. They're both me. And every day I wake up and decide which parts to use. Some days I need to be the wolf. Most days I need to be your father. The trick is knowing the difference. And if you choose wrong, then I live with the consequences and try to do better next time. Ethan put his arm around Caleb's shoulders. That's all any of us can do. Make choices, accept the fallout, and keep trying to be better than we were yesterday. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. They stayed there until the cold drove them to the small tent they'd set up. Inside, wrapped in blankets, Caleb fell asleep quickly, exhausted from the day's work. Ethan lay awake longer, thinking about the choices he'd made, the violence he'd used, the man he'd been versus the man he wanted to be. He'd killed before. Would probably kill again if his son's life was threatened. That capability didn't go away just because you wished it would. But he'd also learned mercy, learned when not to pull the trigger, learned that strength sometimes meant walking away instead of standing your ground. The wolf was still there, buried deep, but it didn't control him anymore. It was just another tool, kept sharp but rarely used, brought out only when absolutely necessary. 3 weeks later, the new house was framed. 4 weeks after that, it had walls and a roof. The town helped with materials, lumber from Brennan's store at cost, nails and hardware donated by Hayes the blacksmith, labor from anyone who could spare a day. They were building more than a house. They were building proof that communities could fight back, could protect their own, could survive men like Thornhill. Mercer stopped by one afternoon, official letter in hand. This came from the territorial court. Thornhill's been indicted on 14 counts of fraud and 3 counts of conspiracy to commit murder. Trial's set for next spring. He'll get expensive lawyers, might walk. Maybe. But even if he does, his operation's finished. Nobody trusts him now. The land he stole is being reviewed. Some of it's going back to the original owners. That's something, at least. It's more than something. It's justice. Slow, imperfect, but real. Mercer paused. The territorial governor's office sent a letter, too. They're offering you the sheriff's position. Official badge, salary, everything. Ethan laughed. They want me to be a lawman? You proved you can handle trouble, and the territory needs people who aren't afraid to stand up to men like Thornhill. What did you tell them? That I'd ask, but I know what you'll say. Do you? You're going to say no, because you're done with that life. You want to raise your son, rebuild your ranch, live quiet. Ethan smiled. You know me pretty well for a kid who's been doing this for 6 months. So is that a no? It's a no. But thank you. And thank the governor. Tell him Coldwater's lucky to have you as deputy, and when you're ready, you'll make a good sheriff. Mercer nodded, tucked the letters away. One more thing. Judge Hartley reviewed your old warrant, the one Cain tore up. He's officially vacating it. Says too much time has passed, and you've proven yourself as a law-abiding citizen. You're clear. Clear, Ethan repeated. The word felt strange. For 20 years, he'd carried that weight, that knowledge that his past could catch up any moment. Now it was gone, erased by judicial decree. How does it feel? Mercer asked. Like I can finally breathe. That night, Ethan and Caleb ate dinner in their new kitchen. The table was rough-hewn, the chairs mismatched, but it was theirs. Through the window, they could see the valley spreading out below, the same view Sarah had loved. Dad, Caleb said, what do we do now? Now, we finish the barn, get some cattle, plant crops in the spring, live our lives. That's it? That's everything. Caleb thought about this. What about the journal? Mom's journal. I've been reading it. Yeah? She wrote about you, about how you were trying to change. She said she believed in you, even when you didn't believe in yourself. Ethan's throat tightened. She was good at that, seeing things in people they couldn't see themselves. She also wrote about me, about hoping I'd grow up strong but gentle, someone who could fight when necessary but chose peace when possible. Sounds like her. Sounds like you too, the way you handled Thornhill's men. You could have killed them all, but you didn't. You only used violence when there was no other choice. I'm trying, Caleb. That's all. Trying to be the man your mother saw in me. I think you're doing pretty good. They finished dinner, cleaned up, and sat on the porch watching the sunset. The valley turned gold, then red, then purple. Stars began appearing one by one. Tell me something, Caleb said. If you could go back, change how things happened, would you? Ethan considered. I'd change a lot. I'd keep your mother alive. I'd find a way to stop Thornhill without violence. I'd save Vance from getting killed. But I can't change any of that. All I can do is move forward and try to make better choices. What's the lesson in all this? What are you supposed to learn from almost losing everything? That some battles can't be avoided. That standing up to bullies is necessary, even when it's dangerous. But also that violence should never be your first choice. And when you do use it, you carry the weight forever. Ethan looked at his son. The men we fought, Vance, Garrett, even Thornhill, they all stopped seeing people as people. We became obstacles, problems to solve. The moment you start thinking like that, you've lost something important, something that makes you human. So the line is treating people like people. Partly. The line is also knowing when to fight and when to walk away, when to show mercy and when justice requires something harder. Your mother drew that line for me. Now, I'm trying to show it to you. Caleb was quiet for a long time. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out the scarred journal. The cover was burned, the pages smoke-damaged, but it was whole. I'm leaving this here, he said, setting it on the porch rail. Not because I don't want it, but because I need to stop looking backward. Mom's gone. The old ranch is gone. We're starting new. You sure? Yeah. I'll always remember her, but I need to build my own life now, make my own choices. Ethan picked up the journal, ran his fingers over the damaged cover. Then he stood, walked to the edge of the property, and set it on Sarah's grave marker. A small stone with her name carved rough, but readable. Goodbye, he said softly. Thank you for everything, for Caleb, for showing me I could be better. I'll keep trying, I promise. He walked back to the porch where Caleb waited. They stood together, looking at the valley. The new house, the future stretching out uncertain, but theirs to shape. What do you think happens next? Caleb asked. I don't know. We rebuild, we live, we see what comes. And if trouble comes again, then we deal with it, together, as a family. I like that. So do I. They went inside as full dark settled over Coldwater. Somewhere in the east, Marcus Thornhill sat in a jail cell awaiting trial. Somewhere west, Margaret Kane ran from justice. Somewhere north, Samuel Kane chased another bounty, another ghost, another piece of redemption he'd never quite reach. But here, in this valley, a father and son built something honest from broken ground. They built with scarred hands and hard-won wisdom, knowing that peace isn't the absence of conflict, but the choice to keep building despite it. Ethan Rourke had been the wolf once, had killed and survived and buried that life under years of silence. When violence came calling, he'd use those old skills to protect what mattered. But he'd also learned the harder lesson, that being capable of violence doesn't mean you're defined by it. Some men are built from darkness and never escape it. Others find light and cling to it. Ethan had done both. He'd been darkness, found light through Sarah, and learned to carry both pieces without letting either one consume him. That was the real victory. Not defeating Thornhill or surviving the enforcers, but learning that you could be a weapon, and a father, a killer, and a builder, dangerous and gentle in equal measure. The key was knowing which part to use and when. Caleb would learn that too, in time. would face his own choices, his own battles, his own moments where the easy path and the right path diverged. But he'd learned from watching his father that courage isn't fearlessness, it's being terrified and standing up anyway. That mercy isn't weakness, it's strength under control. That some fights matter enough to risk everything. The line that defines a man isn't drawn by what he can do, but by what he chooses to do when he has the power to do anything. Ethan had drawn his line. He'd crossed it when necessary, defended it when tested, and returned to the right side when the fighting was done. That was enough. It had to be. Outside, the valley slept under stars, quiet and peaceful. Inside, a father taught his son how to rebuild what fire had taken. They worked with careful hands, building something that would last because it was built from love, not fear. And somewhere in the darkness, the wolf slept too, patient and waiting. Always there. Never forgotten, but no longer in control. Just another part of a man who'd learned that violence could protect what you love, but only peace could help it grow. The story of Coldwater would be told for years afterward, not as legend, but as warning and hope combined. Warning that crossing certain lines brings consequences. Hope that ordinary people, standing together, could face down empires built on greed and fear. Ethan Rourke became a name again, but different this time. Not the wolf. Just a rancher who'd protected his son and his town when both needed protecting. Nothing more. Nothing less. And that was exactly how he wanted it.